college basketball. So it's sadly over, Elijah. I feel like after the
Man.
tournament, we have done this show for so long. We've done our preseason polls. We've, covered the SEC intensely and the tournament. And now it's over.
It is, yeah. But thankfully we got two good games in two different ways in terms of the championships. On the women's side, you got a dominant coronation of a team who I thought was clearly the best team for most of the season, and can go down as an all-time great team with an all-time great women's college basketball player in Aaliyah Boston. Dawn Staley winning her second title. It was a dominating fashion where it was the best team won and the best team showed they won against the greatest powerhouse dynasty in the history of the sport. And then on the men's side, you have what is one of the games of the year in college basketball. I mean, North Carolina coming off that thrilling win against their arch rival, sending Coach K into retirement, and then having a 15-point lead at halftime, a 16-point lead at one point in the game, and just absolutely wilting it away to a Kansas Jayhawk team that it's weird to say that a Kansas Jayhawk team flew under the radar, but this one kind of did. We never thought of them as a top 2 or 3 team in college basketball. I don't think I ever had them outside of my top 5 or 6, but there were certainly times this year where they didn't seem like a team that was going to be the one that's still standing once the nets are cut down and the confetti falls. So a fascinating 2 games for 2 very different reasons, Michelle.
And on the Kansas front, I mean, as far as conferences as a whole, you and I obviously focus mostly on the SEC. We were like, there's got to be a team that's going to make a big run, whether it's Auburn, whether it's Kentucky, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's Arkansas. We talked about, the Big Ten. They had, I think, 7 total teams in the tournament, maybe one of them. We didn't really highlight the Big 12, and Kansas kind of flew under the radar, like you said. And then once it got down to the wire, all the eyes were on Duke, UNC. All the eyes were on St. Peter's. Kansas really they were the 1 seed. They kind of snuck their way in. But as far as regular season, I feel like a lot of people counted them out when they had that huge home loss to Kentucky. People were like, oh, this isn't this Kansas team. But after that loss, they pretty much just chugged right to the national championship. They kind of flew under the radar. They put their head down, and hey, they did it, and they deserve all the credit in the world, because I think what we saw from this Kansas team, the last 4 halves of basketball they played, from that Miami game, and then after the Miami game, that Villanova game, and that first half in the UNC game, not very offensively beautiful from them, like we saw in the Miami.
10 awful minutes, yeah. 10 awful minutes at the end of that half.
But hey, they turned it around, and that's what allowed this team to win the national championship. They didn't get rattled. They didn't let being down by so much and UNC dominating this game deter them. And we saw that in the Villanova game. Even when Villanova got close, got within 6 or 7 points, they couldn't quite get over that hump. Kansas never seemed rattled at all. They seemed calm, cool, and collected. And if you want to win a championship like that, as far as the mental aspect of it, you can't let that get you rattled. You can't let your get tightened up shooting wise. But congrats to Bill Self. He's got his 2nd national championship. We talked about this. As a blue blood, you have to have, I don't want to say you have to have 2, but as far as, I'll bring up Calipari just because I'm really familiar, obviously, with the program. I went there and I hear / get a lot of the hate towards him, just saying, well, he's only got 1 national championship. And if you think about it, as a blue blood, you're held to a higher expectation
than every other school in the sport. That's the remarkable thing too, is that Bill Self has had an incredible history of winning at Kansas. He's had an incredible history of winning his entire career. In all normal seasons, in which you play a normal conference schedule, he's won at least 25 games every season of his career since 2005. 2005, his 2nd Kansas team, they went 23-7. His first Kansas team went 24-9. And that first Kansas team still ended up going to an Elite Eight. It's still the run this man has gone on with this school ever since he's been at Kansas is remarkable. And it's only resulted until this year or before this year, only resulted in one national championship in 2008 with a team that I think we can all agree is nowhere near his best team. I mean, that was a really good championship team. That was maybe a top 5 or 6 Bill Self team, but I don't think that Mario Chalmers, Darrell Arthur-led team was his best one. Sharon Collins, I mean, the names aren't popping out at you when you look at that 2008 championship roster.
But on the opposite side, Derrick Rose is popping out to you, who missed his foul shots.
Yep. Joey Dorsey was a dominant college basketball player, missed his foul shots. Chris Douglas-Roberts, dominant college basketball player, and that's how they end up losing that game. But it's remarkable. Like you go through the it's funny when you look at the pictures of all the Kansas alum that were there at that game, in the national championship game. Like outside of Danny Manning, there were a lot of players that were really good on great Kansas teams that didn't win at all. Like Paul Pierce was chilling there. The Morris twins were on a dominant number 1 seeded Kansas team that lost to VCU in an Elite Eight. That got 11 seed VCU to a Final Four. Like so many of those teams, like that 1 seeded Kansas team that lost to Northern Iowa in the second round back in, I think that one might have been 2009 or 10. I can't remember off the top of my head the specific year, but like there's been a lot of Kansas upsets in the NCAA tournament with teams that were really, really good. I mean, that 2016 Kansas team was a team that I thought was the best team in college basketball by a mile that year. For those who don't remember, that was one of the seemingly 10 Perry Ellis-led Kansas teams. That guy was on in college basketball forever, it felt like. Frank Mason, Wayne Selden, Devontae Graham, that team was really, really good. A 33-win team, lost to the national champion in the Elite Eight. There's a lot of those, and I think it is really neat to see Bill Self get over the hump for that second time. I mean, not a lot of coaches go that many years in between titles, and especially at a place like Kansas, and live to tell the tale. But that's where being patient with this has rewarded Kansas, because he's giving you the teams that are going to win it every year. I mean, there's almost not a year where Kansas has a team where you look at them and say, I don't think they're going to win. They don't have a chance. They always have a chance.
They always have a shot. And I think, Elijah, that's a testament to two things. First, that it's really, really freaking hard to win this thing. I think a lot of people will write off Coach, only one national championship. Well, when the bar is Coach K at 5, just like Tom Brady with Super Bowls, when the bar is that, that's just out of the world insane that they were even able to get that many. And then the drop off is, 3 underneath, or Roy with 3, Bill Self's got 2 now. Jay Wright's got 2 now. I mean, as far as current coaches, Izzo's only got 1, which we're going to hear some sound from him a little bit later. He was on Robbie and Rex Road this week. Great interview. I enjoyed every second of it. Calipari's only got 1.
Boeheim only has 1.
Boeheim only has 1, who's been there for a lifetime. Been there.
What was that?
Patino?
No, he has 2.
He's at 2.
Oh, okay, that's right. He had 2.
Ironically enough, at Kentucky and Louisville. I guess technically 1 counts. I mean, technically speaking, 1 got vacated.
Okay, so everybody says he has 1, but I mean, he did it twice. Yeah. He's got 2.
We saw it happen. Yeah. The Louisville one happened, whether NCAA wants it to happen or not.
L's down all the way.
Amazing stuff.
Also, too, the second point I had was that it shows that being an NBA player does not have really anything to do with if your team wins a national championship or not, right? The NBA drafts off potential, right? You got to have the right skill set. You got to be the right body type. You got to have like lateral movement. Like we talk a lot about Oscar Tshiebwe, right?
Yep.
I feel like he's a really good example, who's a completely dominant, by far the unanimous player of the year for college basketball. But you and I have made it very clear on the show that he's probably not going to go in the first round because his body and his skill set does not really, I mean, he can get there, and I'm sure he will probably have an NBA career, down the line, or at least maybe a 2-way contract, whatever, right?
He'll be a role player somewhere.
He'll be a role player. Yeah. But him being so dominant, like from the outside looking in, somebody could be like, oh my God, like he's got to go to the NBA. There's no way. But actually, he's not projected like a Kennedy Chandler is a first round pick, a Ty Washington, because the NBA play is just, it's different than college basketball.
Yeah, it's a different game. It's especially the way the game is played, officiated. Like there's a big difference in the way they play and the way they just project. I mean, the use for a guy who can grab 15 rebounds in a game isn't as high because you can get a lot of those guys. You can get a lot of guys that grab a lot of rebounds at that level when you just play more minutes. And that.
But he's also only 6'9".
Yeah, I think he's only 6'9". Yeah, exactly.
And for the NBA,
your playing centers are 7 foot all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be shocked to see an NBA center that's not 7 foot. And if they're not, that team is playing what would be considered, drastic small ball. There's not a lot of teams that don't have that kind of size at the 5. And also those guys that are that big also step out and shoot. And then you have to guard them 20 feet away from the basket. Whereas,
listen, we saw Giannis do some step back threes the other night,
which is incredible. Like, you want to talk about the evolution of basketball? Look at that guy. That guy is as big as he is with the arms, as long as he was. If he played basketball 25 years ago, no one would allow him to shoot the ball outside of 5 feet. Granted, now even in today's modern basketball, he makes like 70% of those shots, which is remarkable. But the fact that he even can shoot outside that range is just a testament to what the sport has evolved into as well. It's pretty remarkable to see. But we'll continue the conversation about Kansas and continue the conversation about the evolution of not just like the game of basketball, but college basketball as well. We're obviously in a very different landscape. We're in a very different time of college basketball. Tom Izzo had some thoughts on a lot of the changing aspects of college basketball, including the transfer portal, which has, I believe, we're getting close to 1,000 players that are in it. Whether or not they return to their own school or not is to be determined later, but we're going to get into all of that, preview how this projects onto next season as well, as you're listening to Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Out on the trail today, I noticed the signs of spring. A purple lilac, a monarch butterfly, crisp, cool air, and fresh, bright sunshine. And all this beauty puts me in the mood to head over to my favorite adult beverage depot, Red Spirits and Wine, where I can load up the wagon with the best wines, whiskey, and brews to wet my whistle. At Red, you'll always find the best selection and value, but their Cracker Jack crew is flat out second to none. Just square-dealing folks and straight shooters with great recommendations, and they never come off like some of those big-talking fancy pantsers that are just totally full of, well, let's just say fertilizer. Red Spirits and Wine is the only place I do my trading, and once you've seen Red, there just ain't no sense in looking elsewhere. It's like British pop singer Billy Ocean once said, no more love on the run. Red Spirits and Wine is the real deal. Open 7 days a week at Highway 70 South and Old Hickory Boulevard. And follow Red on Facebook and Instagram as well. We'll see you at Red.
What if you could be debt-free in 3 weeks? Hey, Willie Donick here. My friends at Loan Pronto are helping people do it every day. It's Loan Pronto's Debt Consolidation Home Refi, wiping out tens of thousands in credit card debt. Listen, your home's value is way up. You can refinance now, take money out to pay off all your credit cards, eliminate PMI charges, pay off personal loans, or other high-interest debt. One local couple had over $50,000 in credit card debt. Loan Pronto did a debt consolidation refi. And even though their mortgage rate went up a tad, they cut their monthly payments by $900. Why pay 20% interest when you can consolidate it to one low payment with a mortgage APR in the threes? Homeowners who do it save an average of $800 a month. Do it now and even skip your next house payment altogether. That's what I call financial freedom. Call Loan Pronto now. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Hey, it's Jared from my official sportsbook app, the FanDuel Sportsbook app. This baseball season, turn K's into cash and big hits into big wins with the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a risk-free first bet up to $1,000. Just sign up and place your first bet, and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back in site credit if you don't win. FanDuel's got great promotions every day, especially with a sport like baseball that always has games. It's a safe and secure app, and you get paid fast. And you got to say this. Last year, I told you all the Braves were going to win the World Series. This year, not feeling the same juju. But we'll see. See for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up with the promo code JGM to get first bet risk-free up to $1,000. That's promo code JGM. 21 and older in President, Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable site credit that expires 14 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789.
Hit City is back.
Play ball! And smashes one to left. That's going to get down for a base hit. Navarretto is in. It's a one-run ball game.
Your Nashville Sounds continue their series against the Durham Bulls.
Swing and a miss. Strike three. Sounds win.
Coverage starts at 6:20 on your home for Nashville Sounds Baseball.
ESPN
94.9 and the Game Nashville app.
The season has ended. It is time to sweep up the confetti. It is time to put the nets back on the rims and wait for another season. The Kansas Jayhawks, national champions on the men's side, the South Carolina Gamecocks champs on the women's side. We're talking about the championships that were and where college basketball, men's and women's, goes from here. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Michelle Knezovic. It's Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And Michelle, we're looking at where to start on where college basketball goes from here. There are a ton of players. I've lost count of the amount of players that are in the transfer portal right now. There's going to be a lot of roster shakeup on the men's and women's side, but with NIL in the picture, we've talked about that all year long. It's been a thing that we've kind of covered since the beginning of the season, and we're kind of seeing a little bit how that's impacted the game already, but we don't know, I guess, what the long-term effects of these things are going to be. But the college basketball offseason is now going to be more intriguing than it ever has been because of the names that are in the transfer portal right now and the kind of players that are currently in. And it's almost like a professional sport where there's going to be so much roster reshuffling, and you're going to have to be able to keep up with it all season long. It's not one thing you can just tune out once the season's over and then come back in October and automatically have a knowledge of the rosters like you might have been able to do 10 years ago.
I had myself muted there for a second. I had my first mute of the day.
Oh, man, your first Joe Rexroad of the day.
No, Elijah, I think that is a great point. And if you want to compare it to just professional sports, I mean, you look at the NFL, you look at the NBA, you look at the NHL, right? They have free agency periods where, there's deadlines, and then you have a trade period, and there's different timestamps. So if you're a coach, if you're a GM, if you're a scout, right, you know that you have from this day to this day to figure out what you guys want, to get a deal done, and the list goes on. But when you take a look at college basketball and just the transfer portal blowing up, especially with players getting added that COVID year, I really think that sparked it, because now you're seeing players have almost 6 or 7. I still never get it. It's like, oh, I had a redshirt year, and then I sat out, and then I was injured, and then I had a COVID year, and then I want to do a grad year, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you've been playing college basketball for 7 years.
It makes me miss the days of Perry Ellis, where it seemed like a guy was there forever, but wasn't actually there forever. Like, Perry Ellis only looked like he was 30. He wasn't actually 30, like where John Fulkerson's almost my age.
It's like when people say the NFL cap is fake. No, it's not fake, but you can manipulate the crap out of it. Whereas this isn't fake. You can just manipulate all the years you get for college basketball and figure out how it works, right? Redshirt, injured, and all this, whatever. But for college basketball now with the transfer portal, it's 24/7. It's 365 days a year.
Yeah.
The amount of pressure that puts on head coaches, you don't have a full scouting department that these professional leagues have, where you've got like a bunch of different guys on your team. Okay, you have this region, you have this region, you have these schools, you have, you know what I mean? You're taking a look at the NFC West, like all these things. Whereas college basketball, yeah, you've got a couple guys who help recruiting, but it's not like you have a full scouting department. That puts so much more pressure on the coaches just to be making sure you're paying attention to not only the Power 5 schools, but hey, look at all these mid-major schools too. It's insane. Like, it almost makes me wonder, moving forward, are we going to see, staffs of college basketball programs expanding solely for this?
Yeah, I don't see why not, because you're going to have to already scout players during the season on who you think might transfer or like you're gonna have to keep a page on every team you play. And if you like a certain player, if they somehow transfer, you got to be in on it to try to get them to your school. You're also re-recruiting players that are on your team, in a way. Like college basketball coaches can't just say that they're going to give a player a certain amount of like playing time or anything like that. You can't make certain promises, things happen, and then be able to just have them stick with it because other options are going to be available. Like it's a business. Like I'm going to keep a tracker on how many times I say that phrase during the show today, because obviously like this is going to reshape the state of college basketball forever. The can of worms has been open, and they're not getting back in that proverbial can, right? Like that's not happening. Like what we're seeing in college basketball today is what it's going to be for the future until something else comes along that changes how we do the sport. That's just the nature of the game. But you're going to have to re-recruit players. You're going to have to make sure that players buy in for a long time. You can't just like rest on laurels. You got to be able to keep your players happy there too, which is like, it's the way it is in pro sports, when there's this much money fluctuating into it. And there's a lot of things that happen during the season where like coaches can bail, players are going to be able to as well. And you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to have to re-recruit players, and you're going to have to keep an eye on teams that aren't just Power 5 schools. Like one of the craziest things about this St. Peter's team that made the run to the Elite Eight was when you have other runs like this that were miraculous, like George Mason to the Final Four or VCU to the Final Four. Like those players didn't get to go on and play somewhere else. Like St. Peter's already has 3 of their leading scorers from those games.
In the transfer portal. In
the transfer portal, yeah. But America knows who Doug Edert is, America knows who Daryl Banks is. They know who these guys are that were putting up those numbers in these games and leading St. Peter's to these miraculous wins over teams they had no business beating. Like, we know their faces. And teams are now going to be in a bidding war for them to be able to go play for their team, because that's going to bring in more dollars to the school too. Like if Doug Edert, who is probably the most marketable player because he's the goofy looking white dude with a mustache. Like
he also, there was a stat too of which players got the most Instagram followers during the tournament. And he by far was the leader. And I know people are like, well, why does that matter? That matters because he's marketable now. He now has a deal with Buffalo Wild Wings, right? Like, for him, as far as marketing himself and he's not going to be an NBA player, but that run in the tournament helped him earn a lot of money and be able to bank off that. If he can somehow, keep that St. Peter's story alive, right? Keep building off of his brand. Maybe he does transfer to like an American Conference school, Power 6 school. That's not, I don't think he could go to a Power 5 school. I mean,
maybe.
I don't know.
I'm thinking in my head, like the first random one I'm thinking of is like Wichita State. Does Wichita State benefit from picking him up? Are they going to sell more tickets because they got the guy who is the most marketable player on St. Peter's team? Are we more inclined to watch Wichita State if they get 2 of those guys? I think so, yes. Wichita State instantly becomes more intriguing to me if they pick up Doug Edert.
And there you go. Like you said it again. He's a solid player, right? But he's a marketable player. And if you look at it from the business perspective for that college, right? They're not a huge SEC school, a huge Big Ten school. All the games are sold out, right? You got huge home crowds. That's bringing people in. Oh my God, I saw that guy from the tournament in the mustache, and he was in the One Shiny Moment video. And he was on the face of every meme, every sports article.
I mean, like, that alone is going to help a ton. Like, it's going to be different, I think, and we're going to get into that a lot more as the show progresses. It's going to be a lot different. Does it make it better or worse? We can't say definitively right now. In my opinion, I almost am of the belief that this is going to be better in terms of driving up interest. Like, it's not going to be like what we're accustomed in college basketball, where teams are running it back with the same players for 2 or 3 years. It's becoming more of a reflection of what the sport has evolved into over the last decade. The minute that the tournament was a multi-billion dollar TV venture, that this is exactly the kind of business-ish dealings that we were going to be dealing with.
Well, and just to piggyback off that really quick, just with the evolution of social media and this generation that's the one right below us, Gen Z, really growing up with it, since when has announcing it's almost like when players are announcing that they're putting their name into the transfer portal, it's like they're announcing that they signed their
letter of intent.
Letter of intent. And I saw a tweet about that the other day. It was a WNBA player, I forget who it was, and she tweeted and was like, since when has entering your name in the transfer portal become this whole like social media announcement? But then if you look at it from the flip side, there are so many names in the transfer portal. You touched on it, thousands with the men's and the women's side combined, that a Doug Eater, when he puts that on social media, the amount of followers he has, the amount of people he's going to be able to reach, everybody knows he's in the transfer portal.
Yeah, instantly. And all it takes is someone who's in the media to quote tweet it and be like, so-and-so's in the portal. This could be a big get for somebody. And that's how that passes. And we'll get into that too on the other side. Like what makes transferring like this so appealing? Is it a dopamine rush as well as it is like the ability to have a chance to upgrade your situation? What is one of the reasons that so many players are doing this right now? And how's it going to shape the way college basketball is played and recruited from here on out? We'll get into more of that on the other side. Listen to Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Gary Ashton here. Most people in Nashville know me as the don't sell without the intel and the guaranteed offer guy. But despite my accent, I'm also 100% guaranteed Nashville. I'm a guaranteed musician, a guaranteed dog lover, and you're also guaranteed to see me at every Titans and Preds game. Guaranteed offer means the Gary Ashton team with RE/MAX Advantage will sell your house for top dollar with no cleaning, staging, showings, or open houses, and give you up to 90 days to close. So there's plenty of time to find your next home. Guaranteed Nashville means my team lives here and loves it here. We've served Nashville for over 20 years, and we're passionate about helping the people we call neighbors and friends, which is why we've had a long-standing tradition of donating to the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. If you're thinking about a guaranteed offer, get the only one that's guaranteed Nashville. Request a no-obligation offer by calling 615-301-1650 or go to GaryAshton.com today. Remember, Gary Ashton, guaranteed Nashville.
BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts.
Smokeville Smoke Shop in Hendersonville wants to invite you, your friends, and family to their huge 420 blowout event. Live music, on-site food and dessert trucks, discounts store-wide, and a free dab bar. Smokeville Smoke Shop's 420 event will be held at their flagship store located at 699 West Main Street in Hendersonville on Wednesday, April 20th. Visit them on Instagram at Smokeville Smoke Shop for more event details and to take advantage of additional special offers. Smokeville Smoke Shop for all your smoking needs.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway. Now here's Jim Mitchell.
At Mitchell's Mr. Transmission, we also offer free towing with any major repairs. If your vehicle has a breakdown and you should need any type towing, towing is available through Dad's Towing Service. Dad's is a professional towing company in Nashville that provides all types towing and recovery, 24 hours a day.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway.
Well, I don't think it's great for the game, and I think there's drawbacks, but I'm one of those guys. There's a couple of us out there that have been on committees. I think it's bad for the kids, where everybody thinks the players. I mean, where everybody thinks, wow, guy's got freedom, do what he wants, you know. Just picture yourself. How old's your son now, Joe?
Well, got one going to be a freshman at Michigan State, but Brennan, who you from your camp, is 14.
Yeah, so you got those ages. Just think if you told them do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do, however you want to do it, how do you think you would have turned out? You know, come home when you want to come home. You don't like me as a dad? Well, transfer next door and take that guy as a dad. You got the same thing, you know. I think kids are making a lot of bad decisions because we're teaching them that the minute something goes tough, to get the hell out of Dodge. I said Clark Kellogg on the radio or TV the other day said something great. He said, to grow, it takes rain and sunshine. And if you translate that, it means, if you just have all sunshine, the plant doesn't grow. If you just have all rain, it doesn't grow. And you've got to fight through some adversity. You got to have some tough times. You got to have some rainy days. And those are illegal now. There's a rainy day, I'm getting the hell out of Dodge. And then we got kids transferring. They don't even know where they're transferring to. And the problem is when they do transfer, so somebody transfers to Michigan State, and then all of a sudden I get 2 more transfers. I mean, we're afraid of competition, and competition is what you do every day of your life. You guys are competing with some other radio station there. You have to learn how to compete. And so I'm sure there's a positive here and there. I really am. But the unintended consequences of what we're left with, to me, are going to be, hard on the game a little bit, but nobody cares about that. I think it's going to be worse on the players.
That was Tom Izzo on Robbie and Rex Road yesterday. Very good interview. Go back and listen to it on wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, whatever. It's on there on the Robbie and Rex Road feed. But talking a lot about the transfer portal, the future of college basketball here on Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Michelle Knezovic. And Michelle, you hear that clip about Tom Izzo, or you hear Tom Izzo talk about the transfer portal and his perception of it. What's your initial reaction kind of when hearing his 2 cents on it?
Well, I think first, just initial reaction, right? Tom Izzo is one of those coaches who has been a head coach for a very long time at Michigan State, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has seen a lot of how the game, I think he's a little bit younger than Kay, probably 7 years younger. He's in his 60s, I think. And just in the years he's coached Michigan State, think about how much college basketball has changed and grown. And when he says, I think this hurts the players, that I think is what stands out to me the most, because you have a season, maybe it's not your best season, right? Say you're at a, I don't know, Kentucky, but you're you don't really play. You get probably 7 minutes a game, right? But you're at one of the top programs in the country. If you were to enter the transfer portal, probably not going to be as hard because you have that on your, on your resume.
Your
on
basketball resume. Yeah.
Your basketball resume. But say you are, I feel like St. Peter's is not a good example because they made a big splash in the tournament. But say you're at a lower D1 school that's not as well known for their basketball, and you put your name in the transfer portal, but you don't have a lot of minutes, you don't have a lot of stats to show. People don't really know your name. And a lot of times I feel like it's just an initial reaction to, let me just put my name in. First off, when you do that, it's already, the coaches of your current team are already going to be like, okay, he's planning on not staying here. But what happens if nobody picks you up and your name's in the transfer portal, and then there's no spot left for you on your current roster that you just said you're transferring, but you're just testing the waters, but your coach is going to plan for your departure and fill your spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're stuck in the transfer portal. You get no offers, or no offers that you like, or, hey, you're 18 years old, you're 19 years old. You may think you're a little bit better, you can perform at a higher level, but hey, sometimes you're just not seen by these coaches, or they don't watch enough of your games and they're like, oh, we don't really know this guy, we look at his stats, yada, yada, all this stuff. Then you get stuck, right? So then you're stuck in the transfer portal, and then what do you do? Yep. What if you are on a full scholarship and you put your name in the transfer portal and then that's not offered at the next school? These are young kids, and don't get me wrong. I think the transfer portal can be amazing for some kids. You can have, I think of Charles Matthews, who went to Kentucky, and then he ended up transferring to Michigan and just became a star there, right? And now he has a business actually called the Players Trunk with a couple other college basketball managers, and it's really blown up just once the NIL became implemented, they essentially sell old exclusive gear from players, the player's trunk. But if he was like kind of a, you know, eighth man on Kentucky, not really doing much, like that was a great jump for him. And you see that a lot of times that maybe kids are on teams that they just don't really fit into the offense. They don't really fit into the game plan. They don't work well with the team. They don't work well with the coach. They don't mesh. It's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
And then you see them transfer and you see them do amazing, right? And I think it really can work. But I think right now it's become automatically, I'm going to put my name to the transfer portal. The season's over. And I mean, once the season starts, I guarantee you there are going to be still hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names in the transfer portal on the men's and women's side. And these people are just going to be found with no home.
Yeah, and that's very possible. And I think that's a necessary side effect to be able to allow these kids what to do. I actually had a little bit of a problem with what Tom Izzo was saying because he says it's bad for the kids. Making an overarching general sweeping statement that it's just bad for all these kids is wrong because there's a kid on his team named Tyson Walker that won them the Purdue game this year who's a transfer from Northeastern. I think Tyson Walker's in a better position now than he would be playing at Northeastern. I think it's to say that it's just bad for all kids is just completely wrong. It's like anything else in life. It's bad for some, it's great for others. But the most important thing about it is it gives these players freedom to pursue different opportunities the same way coaches do and the same way regular students do. You have the freedom to make bad decisions, which honestly, a lot of 18 and 19-year-old kids do. Yeah. So I tease myself like as an example. At 18, I went to Tennessee Tech in the same town that I went to high school in. Same university. I didn't go to class much. I was too busy hanging out with friends that I still went to high school with. I made a lot of really, really poor decisions, and I was making them whether or not I was accurately advised or not. I was going to do it because I wanted to do it. I learned the hard way that it's not the way to go about college, and all it takes is flunking out and being out of college for 2 years to eventually figure out that if I want to do what I want to do in a professional career, I should probably go back to school. And I was able to transfer to another school, get in a different position, and after learning the hard way, getting to at least on a path that I was more suitable for than the one that I was on previously. I don't know if I make some of those same conclusions if I didn't have the freedom to make the mistakes beforehand. I know that's one example, but to say that all kids are just leaving because they can't handle rainy days, like one bad day, oh, I'm out. No, it is probably a compilation of things. I don't like how people can just put themselves in somebody else's shoes and instantly say, "Yeah, nope, that's not the right decision for this kid." Like, you don't know that. Like, these kids have parents, man. I don't know if he thinks these players are just sitting at his 18, 19 years old, have one or two bad practices and like, all right, I'm going. I'm not going to tell my parents. I'm going to make this decision right now. Like, a lot of these kids have parents. They advise them. They tell them like after practices, "Oh, well, this happened. This is happening all year." Well, maybe there is a better option for you elsewhere. Maybe this wasn't what you were sold whenever you decided to go play for one school. And I get Tom is yeah. Oh, continue. Oh, yeah, sorry.
So, no, you continue what you're saying.
Yeah, and I was just saying too, like Tom Izzo, like for me, I understand the frustration as a coach of having to re-recruit players because it's got to be annoying. These college coaches do a ton already. I'm sure it's not fun for him to have to look at Joey Hauser and be like, "Hey, great year. Are you coming back? Because we need to know if you're coming back or not. Or do I need to re-recruit you?" I get that frustration, but at the same time, like to be able to allow other kids to make the decisions that his players have right now, like Joey Hauser, who transferred from Marquette, is in a better position now at Michigan State than he was at Marquette, or Tyson Walker, who parlayed a really good 2-year career at Northeastern into a starting to 6-man player for Michigan State, who had some really big moments last year and who was an important part of that Michigan State team. To deny other kids that kind of opportunity because you say they just pout whenever things go wrong is almost, to me, a lazy assessment of a lot of the positions these college basketball players are in.
And I think it's easy to look at something that is, just like it's such a change so quickly, right? I mean, the transfer portal's been there, but just the demand, I don't know, the demand for it, or just so many players putting their names in at once and it just kind of blowing up essentially in these last couple of years of just really being utilized. I think it's easy to look at it and be like, "Oh, this is bad because it's changing." Because I think a lot of people moving forward I see change. Oh, bad, right? At first it was the NIL. Oh, no, bad. Players can't get paid. They're in college. Bad.
It's bad for the kids.
I think we also need to look at this from just the perspective of, okay, these are young adults, right? And we still might be considered kids. I mean, you and I are still only in our 20s, right? People call us kids. I feel like a kid. I'm in my childhood bedroom right now. I definitely feel like a kid.
Yeah, more so now. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think you touched on a really good point is, doing things and failing and then making a wrong decision, that also can help you grow as a person. Making the wrong decision, realizing, oh crap, I was in a really good situation at this school and I just put my name in the transfer portal and now my coach already filled my spot and now I really got to figure out what the heck I'm doing next year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also character building. That's also growing.
Yeah.
And I think for some kids too, when they put their name in the transfer portal, maybe they're just not cut out for that program. Maybe it's just too intense. You think about college in itself and all the changes you have and living away from home and just simple things of having to do your laundry and having to cook and having to, try to figure out your finances and you're really like learning to be an adult and then adding on, well, you got to work out at 6 o'clock in the morning and then you've got double practice days and then you've got also classes. Maybe that program's just too intense for them. Maybe they just can't handle it, which is fine too. And you could find a better fit. But I think also too, maybe the bad Tom Izzo was talking about is kids having a good situation, but not being able to see it when they're in it.
Yeah.
And then not being able to find something. And I mean, it's not going to happen for everybody and players will find spots, but there also will be players who won't, and they'll have a hard time transferring their credits and trying to graduate on time too. So there are a lot of other factors. I think it can be really good for some. I think it'd be good for some. And I think it could also be bad for some. Yeah. I think it's not bad for all. It's not good for all. Like you said, everybody's in a different situation, but I do think there are some great pros to this. Like you look at a player for Kentucky, Bryce Hopkins, he was a very big player in beating LSU this year for Kentucky. Came in, I think he was a recruit he's from Louisville and 5-star recruit, right? But he didn't really see the court virtually at all. And Cal ended up putting him in at that game because I think Jacob Toppin got hurt. And he essentially was just like, okay, go, like, let's see what you got. And he had an outstanding game. And in the press conference, Cal made a point to be like, we're going to play him more. We want to incorporate him more, X, Y, and Z. But there's also a lot of stuff in practice that we don't see. We don't see the behind the scenes stuff. We don't see if he's not performing in practice, if it was just a fluke. But here's a kid now who's transferring to Illinois. Right? And I would argue he's probably going to be a great 4-year player now for them.
Yeah, and easily could. And that's a fantastic example that I want to get into on their side. I want to get into the Bryce Hopkins example. And there's two college basketball teams in particular that I feel like demonstrate perfectly the type of situation that all colleges are going to be, or college teams are going to be seeing themselves in the future. I'll tell you which two schools those are and why that is on the other side. He's listening to Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Hey, it's me, Chase McCabe, and listen, you know that I love BetMGM. I use it all the time, and I talk about it all the time. They are the king of sportsbooks, and they unleash the spirit of Las Vegas with BetMGM rewards. Every time you make a wager at BetMGM, you can earn BetMGM rewards points that you can redeem for online bonus credits like free bets and risk-free tokens. If you're planning a trip to Vegas, like I am, you can also convert your BetMGM points into MGM rewards points that you can use towards dining, shows, and hotel rooms at over 20 MGM Resorts properties located on the Las Vegas Strip and nationwide. BetMGM Rewards is sports betting's premier loyalty program featuring exclusive offers, incredible experiences, and valuable perks when you wager on the BetMGM app. Sign up with BetMGM or log on today and get an even bigger piece of the action with BetMGM Rewards. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. Tennessee only. For problem gambling support, call the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789.
Spring into savings at Electronic Express. Get up to 40% off the latest 4K TVs from Samsung, LG, Sony, Hisense, TCL, and more. That's not all. Get huge savings in every department, like computers and gaming, smart home, housewares, mattresses, and more. Plus, save up to 40% on all appliances with up to 36 months free financing. Shop in-store or online with free express delivery on most items. Shop locally owned and family operated at Electronic Express. We make it happen.
Out on the trail today, I noticed the signs of spring. A purple lilac, a monarch butterfly, crisp cool air, and fresh bright sunshine. And all this beauty puts me in the mood to head over to my favorite adult beverage depot, Red Spirits and Wine, where I can load up the wagon with the best wines, whiskey, and brews to wet my whistle. At Red, you'll always find the best selection and value, but their Cracker Jack crew is flat out second to none. Just square dealing folks and straight shooters with great recommendations, and they never come off like some of those big talking fancy pantsers that are just totally full of, well, let's just say fertilizer. Red Spirits and Wine is the only place I do my trading, and once you've seen Red, there just ain't no sense in looking elsewhere. It's like British pop singer Billy Ocean once said, no more love on the run. Red Spirits and Wine is the real deal. Open 7 days a week at Highway 70 South and Old Hickory Boulevard. And follow Red on Facebook and Instagram as well. We'll see you at Red.
ESPN's Turon Davenport breaks down the Titans like no other.
On the field chemistry, I don't think it's going to be a problem. It's just going to be a process.
Catch TD Mondays at 11, Thursdays at 3, and Fridays at 8. Plus, the Talking with TD podcast drops every Wednesday.
When you draft players, it's not just for one season, it's for a career.
Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Whole lot of players are switching schools, and a whole lot of schools are having to revamp their roster. Some coaches, most coaches, have complained about it, think it's bad for the game. But it's a little more complex than if it's just good or bad. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Michelle Knezovic. It's Courtside with Campbell Knezovic here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. And going into the break, we mentioned a couple examples. The Bryce Hopkins example is a big example of the type of players that are in the transfer portal right now. But there are two schools in two different situations that are going to really encompass the landscape of college basketball and the instant transfer. And that is, so far, it has been LSU, who has had to fire their coach for cause because of an FBI investigation that has lasted like the last 3 or 4 years. The fact that it's taken this long is also a little absurd. But LSU is going to be hit with sanctions. I can almost promise you there's going to be a postseason ban for at least next year. They hire a new coach, and McMahon from Murray State, and they're going to have to revamp the roster because, Michelle, every single player has transferred out of LSU. They have no roster or scholarship players as of now, which, of course, Justice Hill from Murray State, played for McMahon at Murray State, has already announced that is where he is transferring. I think they probably have a good chance to maybe land KJ Williams, the best player for Murray State last year, the OVC Player of the Year. We could also probably see in an LSU uniform for that same reason to go play for the coach that recruited him. That's one school that is having to completely revamp their roster, and they're going to have to use the transfer portal to do it because the transfer portal is what eviscerated them. And then on the other side, there's going to be your average team. Texas Tech was fantastic last year. They might not have been as good if they didn't get Kevin O'Banner from Oral Roberts in the transfer portal, who was an incredible player for that team offensively and defensively all season long. But even despite all that success with O'Banner at Texas Tech, and with Texas Tech being a 3 seed, a team that could have won the national title because defensively they were that elite, a team that did, I think they split with Kansas. They didn't sweep Kansas. They swept Baylor. But Mark Adams in his first year did a fantastic job with Texas Tech, and they're going to lose one of their leading scorers in Terrence Shannon, who has entered the transfer portal. So now they're going to have to use that to replenish scoring value from a player. They've got it for the last 3 years and have to be able to slightly, not totally revamp, but slightly revamp their roster. Those are two schools that I feel like, Michelle, are going to be a microcosm, those two situations, of every other school in college basketball right now.
Well, and I look at the LSU situation too I wonder how much that had to do, well, I mean, with everybody transferring and the coach, switch over. That's what you see a lot in college basketball is when you switch coaches, right? They're going to bring in their own recruits.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this LSU team wasn't bad last year. They showed like great signs at the beginning of the year. They kind of fell off towards the end of the tournament.
Peaked
but
early.
Also,
they played their best basketball early.
Peaked early, but I mean, they also had a lot going on with their coach and probably knew that their coach was about to get fired. So, I mean, you could argue that the guys were probably checked out, right? They probably were trying to figure out where I'm going to go, things like that. It'll be really interesting to see how this program, is constructed because they're really starting from ground zero this off season. And sorry, what was the other program that you touched
Texas
on?
Tech. Yeah, Texas Tech, who
was a team who made a great run
and kept the coach from last year and
kept their coach.
Yeah, and had transfers come in that benefited them greatly, but then also after this season having one of their best players leave.
See, to me, I think when you see one player leave, I think it's more of a, I don't fit here. Maybe they don't get along with the coach. And I'm just speculating, right?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out options, right? I don't know. There's no inside information or anything. Or maybe they think that, hey, if I go to this team, I could get a better NIL deal, right? Because we got to throw that in there as that it's going to be
part of the equation.
A big part of the equation too, because maybe you're at a Texas Tech, right? You're in Texas, big market. But maybe if you go to Illinois, and you're the star player there, then all these local shops, car dealerships, maybe you could do better there. And I mean, this is all just speculation, just throwing out things, throwing out options of what could be going through these players' heads right now. But then we look at the local angle of it that I kind of touched on with you before. Look at Belmont right here. They're having Will Richards, their star freshman.
Mm-hmm.
He's entered the transfer portal and has had some big schools. Big Power 5 schools reach out to him. And also Jacoby Wood, two great players. Like that's going to hurt that Belmont program. Mm-hmm. And I think you could look at it like it's a double-edged sword for mid-major schools because I had somebody tweet at me, Will Young, who listens to Robbie and Rex Road and this show as well, and said it's going to kill mid-majors. But I think you could look at it two ways, because you could look at it like Bryce Hopkins isn't a good example, but say you've got like a 7th, 8th guy, they don't have a lot of minutes at a, school like Kentucky or something. Mm-hmm. But if you go to Belmont, you could be the star player on this team. You could win your conference. You're in Nashville. It's a better market, right? There are a lot of other things. You could make a killer in NIL deals here.
Mm-hmm. Those opportunities exist.
You can look at it different ways. And I know the easy thing to say is, the bigger schools get better and then the smaller schools just get crushed more. But actually, I think it could benefit both, but it also could hurt both.
Yeah.
Which I know isn't really an easy answer, but it's not this, it's so complex, and just with it exploding so drastically and quickly, there just hasn't been a way to really figure it out yet.
Yeah, it's like this nickel that I'm holding right now for those watching on the stream here that I've been fiddling with this entire show. There's two sides of it, and one, as a mid-major school, you can be like Belmont, who had a disappointing end to their season, but when you're that good and your program is built to where it is now growing and getting into another conference because you have had so much success, that when you have a star freshman like Will Richards who got to come in and play as much as he did, start a lot of these games, be able to produce the way he did right off the bat, you're going to attract teams like Arkansas. I know is one of the teams that has completely taken this transfer portal thing and used it to propel them to 2 straight Elite 8 appearances.
Yep.
That's going to attract Eric Musselman's eyes.
Piggy.
Yep. Wow, Woosig Piggy. I like that better, actually. I think that's a little more appropriate. But, I mean, you attract Eric Musselman and Woosig Piggy to come in and swoop and take away a lot of your best players. And that can, like Belmont's lineup, because they're losing a lot of seniors, guys who exercised that last year of eligibility. And then with Jacoby Wood and Will Richard going into the transfer portal and probably going elsewhere, they can also return. But if they go elsewhere, Belmont's going to have to find some production fast to fill those guys' spots. That could leave them in a bad position. That's one side of this coin. They could be a team that last year won 25 games and got to participate in NIT and was at first going to go to the Missouri Valley Conference with hopes of being a team that can get an at-large bid year in, year out. But now they can also be going into it without having any of their better players returning and having to start back from scratch in a new, more competitive conference. But on the other side of that coin, you can be another local team here in the state of Tennessee that found an opportunity in the transfer portal and turned it in to an NCAA tournament appearance. We'll get into that on the other side in the next hour as you're listening to Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
It's the official Bud Light Preds watch party as your Nashville Predators take on the Pittsburgh Penguins this Sunday. Puck drops at 3 p.m., but the party, that starts at 2:30 with all kinds of specials. See you at headquarters, Beercade, downtown Nashville on 2nd Avenue. Go Preds!
It's watching the top players take the ice. It's hard-fought games that end in victory. It's showing your favorite team to your favorite people. Secure your seats for the 2022-23 Nashville Predators season today to ensure you never miss a game at Bridgestone Arena. Plus, enjoy Nashville locker room discounts, exclusive presale offers, and more. Visit NashvillePredators.com/season tickets. Join the Loyal Legion today and paint the town Preds. That's NashvillePredators.com/season tickets. NashvillePredators.com/season tickets.
Get in on the conversation at 615-737-1025. The game text line is driven by Wilson County Hyundai. Online at wilsoncountyhyundai.com.
If you've got a yard, you may plan on digging in it. Like to build an addition, put in a pool, or bury your pirate booty. But you should know that throughout the country, there may be pipelines buried underground. And if you hit one, you've got trouble. Sorry. So before you dig, call 811 to have any buried pipelines located and marked at no charge. For more tips on pipeline safety, visit pipesafety.org. A message from the Tennessee Gas Association, Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Later today.
That one's gone! Classic Yankee Stadium homer. It's gone! Home run! There's Finnegan's Rainbow right there!
It's one of baseball's oldest rivalries as the Yankees take on the Red Sox. Coverage begins at 2:30
on ESPN
94.9 and the Game Nashville app. From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne, broadcasting 97.5 Murfreesboro, 106.3 Williamson County.
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
A Cromwell media station.
Giving you the latest info on college hoops. It's Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic
on ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Hour number 2, Courtside. Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. I'm Elijah Campbell, and she is Michelle Knezovic. Live from New York, it's Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic. Michelle.
Live from my childhood bedroom.
Live from her childhood bedroom with purple wallpaper, it's Michelle Knezovic.
Get excited, grab your coffee, hour number 2. But it's 11 a.m. here in New York, so I got the extra hour technically.
You did. You almost time traveled. Now, when you didn't know, because when you come back, you'll then have time traveled. Whenever you go back one time zone. My favorite part about flying.
And my sister just let my dog in here.
Yes.
Who absolutely went psychopath when she saw me this morning. I don't know if you guys saw it on the Zoom, but she just doesn't know what to do because she won't see me for so long. Oh, if you're on the Zoom, there she is.
Oh my God, look at her.
The precious Stormy.
Golden Retriever?
Oh, yes. Golden Retriever.
God. The best dogs. Have one at home. His name's Louis. He's the best boy on the planet. The Golden Retrievers are the best dogs. I do not accept answers that are not Golden Retrievers.
Well, you can come up here and dog sit whatever. We've got 4. So I'm sure by the time I get home, I will have my dog fix. But yeah, dogs are the best. I miss watching, because during 2020, when I was living here during COVID, I feel like I would literally sit on the couch, watch the bubble basketball games just with my dogs on me.
Now that's a setup. That is a setup right there. But speaking of good setups, we talked last segment about Belmont being a mid-major that's going to be a victim of the transfer portal. A lot of mid-majors are going to be in that boat where you're going to have star players that show out, maybe win their conference player of the year. Maybe they're like Tyson Walker at Northeastern. And Northeastern definitely did not look good this year. Northeastern finished close to last in their conference after having the conference player of the year show out for them and then have Tom Izzo come in and snatch them away and take them to East Lansing to play for a bigger and better school. A lot of that has been happening to Belmont right now. Richard has even gotten a look from Arkansas, who, like we said, back-to-back Elite Eights, but there can be positives for schools that are in Belmont's position, teams that are in the OVC or maybe the SoCon. And there was a team in our state, Michelle, that took a transfer who made some mistakes and had to learn some life lessons the hard way at a big-time school and find himself back on a redemption tour at a smaller school, and that is Silvio De Souza at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Now, the Mocs, regular season champs in the SoCon. I think, they were regular season champs. They won the conference tournament on a thrilling buzzer beater shot, which was my favorite play of all of the month of March.
Oh, incredible.
David Jean-Baptiste hit an incredible follow-away three-pointer as time expires to beat Furman. But they don't win that conference championship if Silvio De Souza does not give them the front court presence that he did all year long. Now, Silvio De Souza, for those who don't know, played at Kansas, got his college career started at Kansas, and unfortunately for him is known for two things that don't really involve basketball as much, one of which being the centerpiece of the FBI investigation between Adidas and a lot of Adidas-sponsored schools like Kansas, Louisville, a lot of schools that got in a lot of trouble because of some improprieties between those schools and Adidas themselves. Silvio De Souza was definitely part of that FBI investigation. And then when he did play at Kansas, he had a hard time cracking the starting lineup, never really was a key role of that in the rotation, but is mostly known for almost throwing a chair at a Kansas State player in the middle of a brawl, in which one of my favorite pictures in the history of sports fights came to exist, where he has a chair over his head and is about to throw it, and a bunch of people behind him have the "oh bleep, no, don't do it" look, and eventually he drops the chair and then just throws hands like everybody else, and got in a lot of trouble right before the 2020 season came to its unfortunate conclusion. But that was definitely the two things he was most known for at Kansas, none of which were involved winning titles or doing things that you do at Kansas as a star high school basketball player. He comes to Chattanooga, Michelle, and was the one missing piece they needed to go from being a really good SoCon team, the way they were the last 3 or 4 years with Malachi Smith and David Jean-Baptiste leading the way in the backcourt. He gave them a front court presence that they needed that got them into the NCAA tournament, where they should have beaten Illinois. I'm still a little salty.
I was just going to say they should have. I was sitting at Burger Republic in Nashville with my boyfriend watching the game. And we're like, oh, and he's from Illinois. And we're like, oh, heck yeah, they're going to knock Illinois out. Like, they got this. Of course we're rooting for Chattanooga. And literally my jaw dropped. I was like, no, I was so mad because like you said, that half court shot, that buzzer beater shot to win their conference, absolutely incredible. Amazing. How could you not root for this team?
Yeah.
And then they had Illinois. Illinois wasn't even that good of a team.
Silvio De Souza went toe-to-toe with Kofi Coburn, a unanimous All-American player, a unanimous All-Big Ten player, like one of the best centers in the country, a mountain of a man in Kofi Coburn, and went toe-to-toe with him and helped Chattanooga have a lead for all but the last 48 seconds of the game. They got up 20-7, Michelle, and they had led the entire time until the last minute, but they don't do that without De Souza.
This stat, it just mind boggles me. Illinois led the game for 25 seconds out of the entire game. But unfortunately, that's the name of the game in March. It doesn't matter. Yep. You can lead for 1 second, and it could be the last second, and that's all that matters.
That's the second that matters most. But that is like we talk about the two sides of the transfer portal coin here, that for mid-majors, because we talked about a lot how it's affecting big schools. Like we talked about how it's affecting teams like Tom Izzo's Michigan State team, where they can lose players, but they can pick up a lot of players too, because when Michigan State, if you're a point guard at Northeastern and Michigan State's coming calling and sending you letters and knocking at the door, it's hard to say no to that kind of opportunity. It's going to be a lot easier for these schools to poach from these smaller schools.
Oscar Shibaway came from West Virginia. It's a big school, but I mean,
Kentucky's Kentucky.
Kentucky's Kentucky. Creighton, Davion Mintz.
Yep.
Kellen Grady Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 3 players. Oh, I wanted to say Obi Toppin.
Jacob
his younger
Toppin.
brother, Jacob Toppin from Rhode Island the year before. Great, amazing role player. Severe Wheeler, their point guard from Georgia. Right.
Yep.
So they literally played the transfer portal game the past 2 years. But those were 5 players I just named who played probably 25 plus minutes. Jacob Toppin was probably, him and Davion Mintz were on the lower end, but all those other guys were starters.
Yeah. A lot of those other guys were starters on those teams. Severe Wheeler led the SEC in assists at Georgia and still transferred within the conference to Kentucky. And like Creighton getting poached didn't kill them. They still were able to. They also end up benefiting because they got Alex O'Connell, who was a bench player for Duke for like 3 years. Was a guy who was a highly touted high school recruit, wasn't getting the minutes he was going to, and probably knew that going into this year wasn't going to get a ton of playing time because Duke had an absolutely stupid loaded recruiting class like they're going to have this year, next year, until the end of time, because the name Duke sells even if Coach K is not coaching Duke. That name sells. He got to go play at Creighton. He was a starter, and he was one of their more reliable offensive players all season long. If you look at other mid-majors too, there's a lot of instances like that too, where the players don't get the opportunities at those big-name schools, and they're leaving for the opportunity. And where does that opportunity lie?
And I think opportunity, right? Like that point you just said was exactly what I was going to touch on. So my brother, who's now a junior college basketball coach, is the reason I love college basketball, because I grew up going to AAU tournaments practically every weekend. I grew up watching him play basketball, right? And in those high school years, trying to get recruited, you got to make sure you're getting exposure. If you're not playing at one of those like elite high schools that actually isn't a high school, right? Or you're not like a top
IMG
recruit,
Academy, yeah.
you gotta make sure, right? You're going to the right tournaments, you're meeting the right people, you're on the right AAU team. And it's really hard, especially to be seen by the right coaches, to figure out where you're going, because when you're any sports player, right? Like, what is your dream growing up, right? You want to make it big. You want to play in college. You want to get a scholarship. You want to sign your letter. That's all that matters, right? My brother would be at the YMCA shooting hoops literally for 7 hours a day. Like it was crazy. That's all he wanted, right? And when he finally did, he went to a D2 school first, and then he ended up transferring to a D3 school, ended up playing, right, had a great career. But you look at like a Will Richards too. Oh my gosh, you get that D1 offer from Belmont, right? Your first year. But then you have offers from Arkansas?
Yeah.
How could you not?
It's so hard not to, yeah.
I mean, you think of these kids, they're so young. Oh my gosh, like I'm going to Belmont, this is great. I'm going to a Division I school. But then I have the opportunity to play at an SEC school.
That's a big opportunity.
You look at it for these kids, that's a huge opportunity for these kids. And that's why I think that the transfer portal can be absolutely amazing. I mean, it's always your dream to play at that level.
Yeah. And
it doesn't matter if it's for one season. And if you get an opportunity to do that, go and do that.
And I love your brother's example too, because he went from D2 to D3, and something a lot of kids would look at and be like, oh, well, that sucks. I had to go D2 to D3. But like, if you want to go play, like you want to go be a key part of a team, like there's being a part of a team. And if you could be a key part of it, and you got to be a part of something that you desired more, like a good example, another mid-major school that benefited from someone taking that step down. Like EJ Anasicki's career is fascinating to me. Guy started his career at Sacred Heart, was one of the better players in that conference, got to go transfer to Tennessee. Tennessee came knocking. Tennessee wanted him to play. He gets to go play Tennessee. He gets to play in the SEC. Well, he barely gets on the floor because he wasn't SEC level good. He was good to be a dominant at Sacred Heart, but he wasn't good enough to be a key player on Tennessee. He would have been a role player, or would have been somebody that barely gets on the floor. Well, there's an opportunity at Cal State Fullerton where he can go be the starting center and be the centerpiece for a team in the Big West, where it's a competitive conference. It's a all right conference, but it's one that if you just win 3 straight games in a row in that conference tournament in March, you can play on the sport's highest level. That's exactly what they did. They didn't win the conference.
You could play Duke.
And he got to play Duke. He got to have that moment where he got to play at the sport's highest level in the NCAA tournament as the centerpiece of a team that he wouldn't have gotten to if he got to make the tournament with Tennessee like he did last year. Tennessee got blown out by Oregon State, and he got to play in garbage time. This man got to play against Duke in the NCAA tournament on a team that revolved around him. And I can almost promise you, I don't know the guy personally, but I would like to ask, like, did the opportunity of getting to be the main player on a team like that surpass being nearly invisible on a team like Tennessee? It's an interesting question, but it's where the opportunity was, and this, at least if anything, gives the players the opportunity to seek that opportunity, whether it be quote-unquote better for them or not. They get to make those same decisions that most other students get to make.
And if you're a competitor and if you've grown up playing sports, there's nothing more than you hate than just watching it in front of you and not being able to get on the court and play.
Yeah. It's not, yeah,
you want to be able to make,
not for everybody.
You want to, and maybe it is for you. Maybe, you kind of lost your love for the game and right, you've got other priorities, and that's fine too, right? Mm-hmm. You need to fill these rosters, but you're a true competitor, and there's nothing more that kills you than just watching it in front of you and not being able to make an impact. And that's where I think this transfer portal could be amazing. I mean, I know this is at a higher level, but even Bryce Hopkins, he was he only played small minutes, sparingly minutes, and he was a 5-star recruit. I mean, he thinks he's gonna go into Kentucky. Right? He's a 5-star recruit out of high school. You think you're gonna play your freshman year, you're gonna kill it, and then he barely sees the court. And now he's transferred to Illinois. Good for him.
Yeah,
he wants to play 35 minutes a game.
Yeah, and if he can go get that somewhere else, he can. And that's honestly a good pathway to opportunity. And one thing that, playing time is opportunity for a lot of these guys. Playing for a big brand is opportunity for a lot of these guys. But now, because of another massive momentum-changing thing in college basketball, college sports in general, with NIL, there's other opportunity to be able to make a living playing college basketball because of what you are earning for your school. That's another right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Victory Award-winning New Amsterdam Vodka knows all about it, but in life, it's not always so clear. So New Amsterdam Vodka believes that in life, you've got to find your own wins. You've got to overcome your fears, go all in, even when you've got nothing at all. Find your wins. And when you do, raise that glass of New Amsterdam Vodka in victory. You've earned it. New Amsterdam Spirits Company, Modesto, California.
Now's the time to get the Kubota Z200 mower. It's built to cut quickly and like a pro, so you can get the zero-turn agility and effortless precision you need to turn your lawn into a work of art. Right now, get the Kubota Z200 mower for 0 down, 0% APR for 36 months, now through June 30th. See us or go to KubotaUSA.com for full disclaimer.
2 locations to serve you, Columbia Kubota or Franklin Kubota. Visit us online at ColumbiaKubota.com or FranklinKubota.com.
Hey folks, Joe Rexford here, inviting you this baseball season to turn K's into cash and big hits into big wins with FanDuel Sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a risk-free first bet up to $1,000. You just have to sign up, you place your first bet. FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back in site credit if you don't win. FanDuel has great promotions every day. The app is safe and secure. It's very easy to use, and you can trust me on that, and you get paid fast. Personally, I'm looking at this baseball season. I know the Braves lost Freddie Freeman. I still like the Braves a lot. That's one thing that comes to mind as baseball gets going. See for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Sign up using promo code Joe102. Get started with your risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code Joe102. You must be 21 or older in present Tennessee. For a sideline real money wager only, $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is now to all site credit expires 14 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line. 800-889-9789.
If you missed the latest edition of Preds Insiders,
Philip Forsberg, obviously he's continuing to put up points, continuing to score goals. If you're a Preds fan tonight, sitting here listening to this, and you're worried about Philip Forsberg, how concerned should you be? What do you think is a fair level of worry? How does Chase McCabe come down on the Philip Forsberg contract situation?
I'm still not super concerned. I ultimately think they're going to get this done, mainly because David Poile and the Predators don't really have a choice. I mean, they have to figure out how to get it done, and it's probably going to cost them maybe a little bit more than it should. I know David Poile was trying to avoid that, which any GM would want to avoid that. You know, he had several conversations with us on Darren, Donick, and Chase of his goal was to get it done before the deadline. That didn't happen. But if you're Philip Forsberg and his camp, you got to do what's best for you, too.
search Preds Insiders today on your favorite podcast platform. The newest edition releases every Monday at 6 on ESPN, 102.5 The Game, and the Game Nashville app.
I was all for players getting some compensation. Meaning, I like when, I wish we could get it where they get so much money and everybody gets that. Because to me, it isn't pro ball. Now, if we want to make it pro ball, then let's make it pro ball. But I got buddies in the NBA. I got, of course, my best friend Mariucci, and he says, you guys are trying to make it like pro ball. I said, no, we're not. In pro ball, if you sign, it's a 4 or 5 year contract. We have a semester. We have free agency every day of the week. In pro ball, there's a salary cap. Rookies can get this, and that. We have nothing. So there again, we're back to no rules, and there's no boundaries, and there's no guardrails. And I think what started out again a good idea to help. I think now it's going to turn into something tougher. I'm all for guys getting more. I'm not. I mean, I think that's what the NBA's for, and that's what the NFL's for, and that's what Major League Baseball's for. I hope we don't diminish what a college education is and how important that is. But you know what? I adjust to it whatever way I can. But I don't know if anybody's ahead of it, because I don't know if anybody really knows what's going on, and we're all trying to figure that out. But getting help for the players, 100% for it. But without boundaries, question where that's going to head.
I'm all for help for players, but not too much. That deal's too much. It's pro sports now. I can get paid. Not all of you can. Tom Izzo on Robbie and Rex Road. Great. It was a really good interview, and it's good to hear those different perspectives. I like to dump on the takes, and that's what I do. But that is a perspective. There probably should be some rules in terms of the way it impacts recruiting. You can't just pay for recruits now. But the NIL discussion is definitely one that's going to be a hot button one in collegiate sports for a long time, not just college basketball. And we're going to touch on it right now here on Courtside, the Campbell and Knezovic. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Michelle Knezovic. Michelle, your initial reaction when we were talking about NIL changing the game, and like we said, with the transfer portal, it's neither completely good or completely bad, because it's all about individual situations. It benefits some players, it benefits some schools, it can hurt some players, it can hurt some schools. But that's, I guess, not the point of why these rules have gone into place to begin with. But when you hear Tom Izzo talk about it from a guy who has been coaching in this for a long time, especially when it relates to making this the pros, quote unquote, what does that make you, I guess? What are your first initial takes?
Well, I'm finally happy that we're talking about this, because I have something to say.
Yes.
First off, I do want to touch on that. I agree with him in the sense of we need something that, I mean, it's so new right now, but I do think that the NCAA needs something, whether they have people who work for them, but they're like in each team or something that helps regulate it, helps the kids, helps make sure that these kids aren't being taken advantage of. Right? Because these are kids trying to make business deals with companies. You want to make sure that your students are being, or your athletes are being protected, right? You don't want them, or whether that's like my former boss at Kentucky, TJ Beisner. So he used to run the UK Sports Network with me, and we would do the live streams and the broadcasts. And since then, he got hired onto Coach Cal's staff, where essentially he is, I don't know his exact position, but essentially he overlooks the NIL deals and makes sure that these kids are not taken advantage of. He's just an adult in the room, right? And I think that's very important. I think that's very important to make sure that these kids are getting everything they sign up for, and especially at a school like Kentucky where NIL, they're going to be seeking out these players to get these deals. On the flip side, Tom Izzo makes a lot of money. Coach Calipari makes a lot of money, right? These D1 college basketball coaches, these D1 college football coaches, Jimbo Fisher, what did he sign about? $80 million?
Over the course of like what, 9-10 years, something like that? Like that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Yeah.
Right? And why are they able to make this much money? Because the revenue of college football, college basketball is a lot of money. And it generates a lot of money. And why does it generate a lot of money? Because of the product that we are watching on TV. And why is the product so great? Because the athletes are so great and the kids are so great. And don't get me wrong, I am not diminishing a college education, a master's. I think that college education, listen, very important, right? I think nowadays, honestly, you can get jobs, you don't need one. But I personally think education is important.
Yeah.
Right? I think that if they're getting it paid for, yes. But what they are doing for just an entertainment value in society nationally, some internationally, I mean, the amount of money that they're driving in is crazy. And the fact that for so long they weren't able to benefit on it. Yeah. I'm all for this. I think that NIL is great. I do think though, they gotta figure out something, like we said, it's so new right now. They gotta figure out something where, not to regulate it, but like a system or something where they can help these kids, or just make sure that it's somehow organized for the kids' sake or the athlete's sake. I don't really know what, but somehow they need to organize it. I mean, that's not an idea, right?
Regulating.
It's just
I guess some
regulating.
kind of regulating to where like you can't, I don't want to say putting a cap on it, because like that's not very fair, because coaches don't have caps on the salaries they can make. I feel like a lot of it is like when it comes to like, you can't just straight up, I guess, I don't know. And that's the hard thing too, I guess, paying players, like having like on a salary, which I wouldn't be opposed to at all, because like they earn a lot of the money they're making these schools. In terms of like, and I don't think we should make rules to make it, I guess, completely fair for schools in terms of a competitive balance, because I mean, unless it just makes it completely, you know, the haves and have-nots, which at the same time, that's what college sports is already. Before NIL, there was the class of the haves and have-nots, you know. Like, you can't tell me St. Peter's plays a fair game even 10 years ago to what Kentucky has in terms of playing in an arena like that, having recruiting resources like that. Like, college sports is already very unfair in that regard. As long as players are able to be financially compensated, like, that's okay with me. Like, I guess the biggest thing that I had against what Tom Izzo was saying there, he goes, we're, you know, like, I don't want us to diminish, like, the value of a college education. Like, buddy, college athletes getting paid isn't what's making a college education not worth what it used to be 35 years ago, okay? There are other varying factors outside of the world of sports that make my degree sometimes worth the same amount as the toilet paper that sits in my bathroom, okay? Like, there's some ways that the college education has been diminished to what it used to be 35 years ago.
The internet being what it is, and being able to, if you can't afford a college education or college isn't the books for you, there's this thing called, you can learn a lot off of YouTube, Google. You can learn a trade. You can go to trade school, and you can make a lot of money as a mechanic, electrician, a plumber. Like, those are legit careers where you can support yourself, support a family, and make more than somebody who has one.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're going to be like, don't get me wrong, there are some where you can't, where it's like a doctor or things like that. But those are specific.
Yeah. I prefer them to get a college education. Exactly. Like
I would prefer surgeons to have gone to medical school as well.
To be able to do what they do, I prefer you to have the amount of schooling you have to go through. And that's not diminished. Like those type of things will never be diminished. And there is something about achieving something. Like I'm still personally proud of like achieving graduating college. Michelle, I know you're proud of achieving getting your master's. Like that is still like really significant stuff. But at the same time, if you are in a free market worth a ton of money because you're making your school millions, or you're making your school participate in a tournament that generates billions in ad revenue, then
billions with a B.
Yes, then your college education won't suffice in terms of giving you what you are worth financially at the biggest part of your earning, I guess your earning timeline. Like Doug Eater. I love using that example because that kid will never have the earning power he does if it wasn't for winning a bunch of these games against teams that they had no business beating on a stage they almost had no business being on. And he's going to be able to financially benefit. Daryl Banks from St. Peter's, same way, are able to parlay these things that take a lot of work and that take a lot of commitment into actually pulling off, and to be able to turn these in to opportunities that's more than just here's a degree, because that's exactly what they're worth. They're worth what they're earning in these tournaments.
Well, we talked about this last week. I mean, women's basketball players.
Yeah.
You don't make NBA money in the WNBA. That's why all of these women play overseas, because they're probably making more money over there. Actually, a lot of them are making more money playing in overseas and the European leagues. But women's basketball, they could make millions in it and then be able to support themselves more in the WNBA and be able to live out their dream longer in the WNBA, because you don't make money like the NBA players. I mean, if you're a first rounder, you're maybe making 80K.
Yeah.
Which if you're in the NBA and you're in that same position, you're making millions.
Yeah.
So for women's college basketball, I think this is huge. I think Aaliyah Boston, you have these huge names out there. You can make some great money for it. And I think that it's really, really going to help that.
Yeah, and it's money that's going to keep them from having to play in Russia. I mean, which, as we learn now, it's probably not the smartest idea to go play in Russia, no matter how much money they give you. Like, that is fantastic for the women's game, too. And, like, NIL, as much as there's always rightful concern for change in college sports the way it is, and not college sports being what it is, and it having the pageantry and the passion of like students participating in these things definitely are the things that separate it from being a pro sport. However, like Tom Izzo said, like, we don't want to be like pro sports, but I have bad news for Coach Izzo, and that is that ship sailed a long time ago when the tournament was sold for billions upon billions of dollars in TV contracts. This became a business a long time ago, and if we're gonna play
don't
that
hate
game,
the player, hate the game.
If we're gonna sell out massive arenas that rock stars sell out because of your players, then it might be time to be a little more like the pros, to make it a little more fair for the guys who are putting this, the guys and girls who are putting on this product for everybody. And that's gonna be a conversation that will not end this season. It will only continue as the years go on. And Michelle mentioned how positive this is for the women's game, how positive it is not just for female athletes to get this kind of compensation, but to increase their popularity. We have a fun stat that I have been saving all show that I want to give to you on the other side. Let's listen to Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts.
How can a half-carat diamond magically grow into a 2-carat diamond? With Genesis Diamond's 110% diamond upgrade guarantee.
Our trade-up policy is the best in the United States.
That's Stasia at Genesis, explaining how if you buy a diamond today and want to trade it in for a bigger one next year, Genesis always gives you back your original purchase price plus an extra 10%.
We will gladly give you every single penny you paid for the diamond plus an extra 10%, which is amazing. No one does that.
As a real-life example, take Stasia's customer Paul.
When he first started, he got a half carat, and then as he became more successful, we rewarded him. He came in and he got a 3/4 carat, and then he's traded for a carat. I'm sure I'll see him this year for a carat and a half. As they grow and change and become more successful, their engagement ring can grow with them also.
And there's no catch, no minimum trade-up requirement, and it works on diamond studs and diamond pendants as well.
You get every single investment dollar you put into the diamond, you will get an extra 10% towards the new diamond.
Genesis Diamonds and luxury pre-owned Rolexes.
You can trade as many times as you wish.
Continuously voted best jewelry store and best place to buy an engagement ring. Green Hills and Cool Springs.
If you missed the latest from Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving.
Well, see, Babe Ruth, and I was talking about this with somebody else. You know exactly where I'm going with this.
I do, yes.
Please explain to the people.
About Babe Ruth?
Yeah, like why I can't put Babe Ruth on the Mount Rushmore.
Why?
Because he was fat.
Okay, I knew you were going to go there. We have done way too much fat shaming against baseball players today. I don't understand why you are so mad about Babe Ruth being fat.
You cannot be. Like,
I think it makes it cooler.
The greatest athlete of all time. Like, you can't be in that discussion if you're that overweight.
I think it makes it so much cooler that, like, in between innings, Babe Ruth would, like, go smoke a cigar, or before games, he'd, like, eat a big old steak and drink a beer.
No, he wouldn't eat steak.
What would he eat? Hot dogs?
Hot dogs.
That is gross.
Tune in Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman. Weekday afternoons from 2 to 6.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Hey, it's Jared for TriStar Moving. If you're looking to move, you need to give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. At TriStar Moving, you'll get 5-star service throughout the entire process. Everything will be taken care of, from covering your floors, banisters, railings, front door thresholds, furniture, TVs, and more. They took great care of my move and made it as stress-free as possible. If you're looking to move, give TriStar Moving a call, 615-640-1219, or visit them at nashvillemoving.org/radio and get 5% off your entire move. TriStar Moving, my official movers.
To quote Jimbo Fisher in what was one of my favorite press conferences of the year of our Lord 2022. Game's changing, man. Ball game's changing, man. Ball game's changing, especially in college sports, where transfer portal and NIL have made this look more like pro sports and free agency. Whether it's good or bad for the game, we can argue and cry about it all day. However, there are a lot of positives that we can point out, especially in NIL. You're listening to Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Michelle Knezovic. Michelle, we talked about how, in the last segment, we talked about how the women's game is getting improved because of NIL. It's starting to showcase a lot of the star power that women's college basketball has. Like, Paige Beckers is the most valuable in terms of internet followers and the amount of money she'd be worth on the open market with her abilities and her popularity more than any men's player. The top 5 athletes in this in terms of marketability, according to a study that we mentioned on the show last week, the top 5 players, 4 of them are women's college basketball players. The only male player on that list was Paolo Banchero, who's going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. He might be number 1. With that being said, I said I had a stat that just shows how much more popular this is becoming for women's basketball and how much more the sport is benefiting from the star power it has. And with the money they're starting to make now, how this could be good moving forward. The national championship game between UConn and South Carolina, who had the best player in the sport with Aaliyah Boston on one side, the best coach in the sport. Yeah, I said it, and Dawn Staley on that same side. With UConn.
Yeah, you said it.
I said it, yeah. Whether it's actually true or not, I'm saying it. I'm saying it with my chest. And then on the other side, the most dominant powerhouse program the sport has ever seen in UConn, with the most marketable player in the sport in Paige Beckers. They played in the national championship game, and Michelle, ESPN said it was the most watched college basketball game, men or women, on the ESPN platform since 2008.
And ready for this? It
Mhm.
wasn't even that close of a game.
It wasn't even
a close game.
South Carolina bludgeoned them. UConn came back
Which
a little
is
bit,
great.
whatever. Yeah, it's great. I mean, for the longest time, the most watched college basketball game in history was the 1979 championship between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and that game wasn't close. I mean, that game.
But
I
you
mean,
got
Michigan
Magic
State-
and you got Bird.
Exactly. And that was the most watched game for decades. And that also, like, put college basketball, like Magic and Larry, it's funny what they did for the game. It was not only did they make the NBA a must-watch live event to where you're no longer watching the championship games on tape delay, but they also did the same thing for college basketball. When they were college students, they made college basketball big enough to the point where more people showed out to watch that game than any game in the history of the sport, and it was that way for a hot minute, too. And it might still be that way. I guess not anymore. I think Kansas and North Carolina this year actually might have broken that record. But that was a very popular game, and that game did wonders for the NCAA basketball tournament on the men's side after that. It's only going to go up from here for the NCAA women's tournament for years on end, because I think they're going to start setting a lot of these records because we're starting to realize, A, how good the product is, and B, these players are incredibly marketable. And when they become NIL athletes and they're able to be more visible and be able to showcase this game, this great game, to their massive audiences, we're going to see this expand as years go on.
Elijah, I mean, I completely agree with all of this. That was my best in sports. We do a best and worst in sports every week on Robbie and Rexroad on Thursdays. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it, right? I feel like for so long, there was always the argument, well, is there an audience for it? We don't think there's an audience for it. Well, how are you going to find out if there's an audience for it if you're not playing them in specific time slots? I mean, everybody knows that there are specific crucial time slots in ESPN. You think about it. I mean, it's not too hard to figure out, right? A 7 p.m., right? Everyone's off work, or if it's a Friday or a Saturday, you're out, you're drinking beers, prime time. You have these primetime games. And if you're putting them at random slots, or if you're putting them on ESPN Plus, or you have to buy a subscription to watch these games, they're just not going to get watched as much as if somebody's flipping through the channels and it's on normal ESPN, just because of the accessibility factor, right? Just because of the accessibility factor, not because somebody doesn't want to watch it or whatever. But if you're just flipping through and you're like, oh, I'm going to put this game on. Don't get me wrong. I get it. It's a different game, right? But just being able to be seen allows more people to have their eyes on it. Just like, I can't even like harp on accessibility enough, because a lot of people, even me, liking women's college basketball and enjoy watching Paige Beckers and Aaliyah Boston and Haley Van Lith and Emily Angsler playing these games, I'm probably not going to go out of my way to go log onto my computer, to find my ESPN, to activate my account, to get the ESPN Plus, to make sure it's streaming. And the streaming's just not as good quality. And I'm somebody who watches and follows women's college basketball. And that shows, like, our society's lazy. We all know that. I'm lazy sometimes.
Lazy.
We all are.
It's my thing.
I probably wouldn't do it for a men's game unless it's Kentucky, because I am obsessed with Kentucky basketball because I went there and I'm a huge fan. But there's only a few people who will actually go out of their way to find and figure out how to watch a game. And it's probably just the hardcore fans, or if you have something riding on this game, whether you know somebody playing or you have a connection to the team. But I think it's amazing for the game. And you talk about just these women, these female athletes, they have more on their shoulders to make themselves marketable just because of the wage gap in the NBA and the WNBA. If we look at just the top, right? So these men's players, if you're a one and done player, you're not really going to go out of your way probably to do these NIL deals or seek out them, because in your head, it's like, okay, let me just focus on basketball. I know that I'm going to be a lottery pick. I know that I'm going to be making a mill. And you're probably just not really worrying about that. If people come to you, yeah, like you'll probably do a deal or something like that. But I don't think we saw Kennedy Chandler do anything this year as far as NIL. And he's clearly going to be a lottery pick for Tennessee. And On the women's side, I looked this up because I genuinely was curious and I didn't know what the stat was. But if you look at the average pay for a WNBA player, I just Googled this. WNBA's average salary in 2021, $120,000 about, right?
Wow.
And the league's super max salary is about $221,000 and is only achieved by 7 players. Brittany Griner is among them. So remember, we were just talking, Brittany Griner, she was the one who got stuck in Russia because she was playing over in Russia. So there is a female who is at the max contract, has a max
super
contract.
Max, yeah.
Super max contract in the WNBA, but is still playing overseas.
Yeah.
And is a professional athlete, right? Doctors make more than that.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, doctors should get paid that because they're doctors. But if you just look at a super max contract in the NBA, you ready for this? The average salary in the NBA. Actually, take a guess.
Okay, the average, okay, because it's ballooned. Solomon Hill was making like $9-10 million a year for a while. Is it per year? I guess per year what they
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess
the average, and you have to keep in mind that like the top is like very top, so that plays into.
Yeah. So the average, I'll say 12 million.
7.5.
7. Okay, that's okay. A little lower than I thought. Yeah, because some of the supermaxes are inflated.
I don't even know how to figure out that math right now, and I'm having like a brain fart. I don't even know how you would calculate like the percentage of what 120,000 is the average.
The average into the 7 million. Yeah.
And meanwhile, they're both owned by the NBA.
Yeah, they're both NBA ventures. Like the WNBA and the NBA are the same thing.
Are the same company.
Same company. Yeah, same entity. Which, like, it is astounding. Shoot, John Wall gets like $40 million a year to not play basketball, which is remarkable to me.
Exactly. Anthony Davis to not play basketball.
Kyrie Irving got paid a lot of money to just not play basketball this year. Like, that is remarkable. That is a mind-blowing stat.
And don't get me wrong. I know that these NBA games generate more money, but it is absolutely ridiculous
that the NBA
that the gap is so far apart. That is insane. And you have your own people, your own players going over to Russia to play so they can make more money during the state Russia is in, and having a star WNBA player,
a top 5 player
arguably,
in that league.
Yeah, one of the faces of the league getting stuck over there because she has to play over there.
Yeah, she's stuck in a Russian prison right now, which there's a lot of places on this planet that I don't ever want to be stuck in. A Russian prison is in the top 2 or 3 maybe on that list right now. And
let alone with everything going on.
Exactly. That's a dangerous situation in itself, but there is a lot of hope to me that this is going to get situated, or not that the WNBA is going to be able to publicly fix what is very publicly broken, and that is with a lot of the star players that are going to be like when Paige Beckers gets the WNBA, that is going to help immensely. The popularity of some of their young players right now, I think, can only help the game as it goes on because they're getting this platform already at the college level and making the new crop of players that go into the WNBA every year a lot more visible, and that alone is going to bring.
You start from the bottom and you build it up. It's not an overnight flip of the switch. But I completely agree with that. I think NIL is really going to help the women's game, help these women have platforms. You know their faces, you know who they are. Translate into the WNBA to hopefully help that wage gap.
It's going to help it. It's going to help it a ton. And one thing that helps me enjoy a lot of WNBA basketball or women's college basketball on weekends is hard seltzers. I'm a big hard seltzer guy, and Seltzerland specifically is up there on that list. I know Michelle has a word about Seltzerland she would like to give out.
Who doesn't love a cracked seltzer with any sporting event you're watching, right, Elijah? So Seltzerland is turning Nashville into a hard seltzer paradise on Saturday, April 30th at Riverside Golf Links. You can enjoy a one-of-a-kind immersive experience as you spend the day tasting, wait for it, over 100 unique hard seltzers indulge in mouth-watering munchies, tons of seltzer swag, and of course, we're going to bust out some Instagram pics with all the swag. Seltzerland has rounded up the best hard seltzer brands in the land for one epic day to get dedicated to the bubbly brew everybody can't get enough of. So you are not going to want to miss out. Seltzerland 2022, April 30th at Riverside Golf Links. Join me, Michelle Knezovic, on Saturday, April 30th, where they're turning Riverside Golf Links into the hard seltzer paradise. Guests will be able to enjoy this one-of-a-kind immersive experience, spending the afternoon tasting over 100 unique seltzers. Make sure we're sprinkling in some water in there, everybody. Indulging in delicious treats, tons of seltzer swag, and of course, we're going to be posting a lot on Instagram. Like I said, I'm going to be there. You're not going to want to miss this. Make sure you're listening to ESPN 1025 The Game all month long for your chance to win tickets to Seltzerland April 30th at Riverside Golf Links. I am so excited. Just about 3 weeks away.
Gary Ashton here. Most people in Nashville know me as the don't sell without the intel and the guaranteed offer guy. But despite my accent, I'm also 100% guaranteed Nashville. I'm a guaranteed musician, a guaranteed dog lover, and you're also guaranteed to see me at every Titans and Preds game. Guaranteed offer means the Gary Ashton team with RE/MAX Advantage will sell your house for top dollar with no cleaning, staging, showings, or open houses, and give you up to 90 days to close. So there's plenty of time to find your next home. Guaranteed Nashville means my team lives here and loves it here. We've served Nashville for over 20 years, and we're passionate about helping the people we call neighbors and friends, which is why we've had a long-standing tradition of donating to the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. If you're thinking about a guaranteed offer, get the only one that's guaranteed Nashville. Request a no-obligation offer by calling 615-301-1650 or go to GaryAshton.com today. Remember, Gary Ashton, guaranteed Nashville.
Spring has sprung, which means it's time to renew your home with Social Furniture. It's their Spring Fling sale, where all furniture is up to 50% off. That's right, up to 50% off on top name brands such as Serta, Sealy, Simmons, Caracol, Bernhardt, and Woodhouse. At Social Furniture, you'll find new bedroom furniture, mattresses, and sofas, all up to 50% off. Spring into Social Furniture today on Charlotte Avenue in West Nashville. Shop local, shop social. Social Furniture is a proud supporter of your Nashville Predators.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway. Now here's Jim Mitchell.
Our fleet vehicle program is a great benefit to all the fleet companies in Nashville. We are able to get their vehicle back on the road a lot quicker than the downtime of most dealers and most general repair shops, simply because we have the transmissions available. We're able to put priority on their vehicles to get them back on the road quickly.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway.
Hit City is back. Play ball.
And smashes one to left. That's going to get down for a base hit. Navarretto is in. It's a one-run ball game.
Your Nashville Sounds continue their series against the Durham Bulls.
Swing and a miss. Strike three. Sounds win.
Coverage starts at 6:20 on your home for Nashville Sounds Baseball.
ESPN
94.9 in the Game Nashville app.
Final segment of the show, Courtside, Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. You can always contact us, whether it be phone, text, 615-737-1025. Our phone line's brought to you by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Michelle, I know we have some questions on the text line. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to see what the people are asking us.
Yes, Elijah, let me make sure I get the name right on this one.
Always text your name in. It's good text line etiquette. If you're going to text our shows, which we love, we'd love to give you credit for a good question. Or a comment. Or a good comment.
Oh, hi, Michelle and Elijah. What do you think about internet gambling? Is it good or bad for college basketball? I thought this was a really good one because usually, if you are familiar with our show, this last segment we usually use as the give and go, which is where we give you gambling picks and you decide whether you're going to go and place them or not, which is always a fun segment. And it's a great way that we can interact with you all. But I mean, I can go ahead and answer this quick first, Elijah. I think it's great for the sport. I mean, I think when you're looking to make some money, you're not just looking at these big games that are going to be really competitive. A lot of times you're looking at these mid-majors and where you can probably guarantee that you will be able to cash out on them. I think also too, we've talked about it all year long, South Carolina, Dawn Staley, the queens of covering the spread. So
Yep,
I think far as every time, I think as far as that goes, I think it's great for the game. I think you can bet on essentially, I mean, I know some sports books only have access to certain games, but I personally think it's amazing. I think that betting on sports is great, especially now that it's regulated by all these sports betting apps. You can get your money, deposited into your account. You can make a lot. I mean, I know people who, don't get me wrong, it's a slippery slope and you have to be careful with it, just like anything.
Yep, like a lot of things. Yeah.
I think it makes it fun. I think that I think it makes more games more interesting because people have money on them.
I mean, honestly, I love college basketball as a whole. I think that's pretty evident here. I watched more Mountain West basketball this year than I have my entire life, not because it was a quality conference that deserved to get 4 teams in the NCAA tournament despite none of them winning. I also like to gamble on the games. Like, I like to sprinkle a little bit on those games,
Still salty about South Dakota State?
Very salty about South Dakota State not winning and San Diego State losing to Creighton. Both of those were very winnable games. But it definitely helps spark your interest in those games too, especially in mid-major schools, because that's where the edge is. I mean, a lot of these lines are affected by popularities of schools like Duke, where there's a Duke effect. Like, people are gonna bet money on Duke because they have such a large fan base. North Carolina has a large fan base. Kansas has a large fan base. Kentucky has the biggest fan base. So games on that, it's hard to gain.
Elisha, thank you.
I think that's an honest statement there. I think they might have the biggest fan base in college basketball, and when you gamble on Kentucky games, that is baked into the line each time. There is no Colgate tax on the lines of Colgate basketball games, but that's where my bread was buttered this year in the college basketball season, was a lot of those mid-major games that don't get a ton of attention. That's why I love it. Online gambling for college basketball, to answer the question, it's great when I win, it's bad when I lose. That's my general rule. But
so basically the whole show, how we talked about there's good and there's bad. I mean, I think it brings more eyes to it.
Yeah, it brings a lot of eyes to it.
Everybody was very aware that Dawn Staley's South Carolina team completely dominated the women's game and covered the spread. So how many more people are putting money on that game
that are going to watch it? Yeah, you're going to put money on it. You're going to watch it. That's going to bring a lot more eyeballs to it. I think that is the big positive. And there's always going to be the looming negative, because if there's anything that Calvin Ridley has taught us in the last year, it's that there is always a temptation to place bets on the sport that you're involved in. I know as of right now, the rule is if you're a college basketball player, coach, or even on a staff, I have friends that are graduate assistants at major college basketball schools. And I've talked to them and they're like, we can't bet on college basketball games, even if it's a team in a conference that is far away from them, multiple time zones away. They can't do it. They signed on to that. They have an agreement with the NCAA that they cannot bet on other college basketball games, which is perfectly fair. I think that is a very fair thing. But they can bet on baseball or NBA, pro sports. They just can't bet on that. And I think that's fine. Calvin Ridley bet on NFL games, whether it once he was competing in or not. It still has that public perception of unfairness, whether things could be doctored. He knows something that other people don't. That is a very gray area that we can talk about for days, right?
Yeah.
But my thing is that temptation would be there whether it was legal or not. I mean, there are 2 very massive point shaving scandals in college basketball history. In the 70s, you had one with Boston College, one that I believe, I might be wrong, Bruce Pearl was he wasn't a part of the scheme, but he was I think he was a student manager on that Boston College team, and you go back and check.
Bruce Pearl finding himself.
Exactly, yeah. It's everywhere he goes. But in the 1970s, some Boston College players got involved with the bleeping mob. If you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, but Henry Hill, real life Henry Hill was paying those players to shave points on basketball games. They got caught, and that was a massive scandal. In 1994, the Arizona State Sun Devils were caught in their own point-shaving scandal. there are ways that these underground gamblers are able to reach college athletes and entice them to shave points if it meant making them money. But now that college athletes have a way to make money with NIL, now that sports gambling is legal and it is more, I guess, more regulated than it ever has been. And a majority of gamblers now aren't people that are going through the mob to do it, all right? I don't worry about Henry Hill getting into the ears of Remy Martin if he was at Arizona State still and being like, hey, I need you to cut 5 points off this game because the spread's 6.5. Like, I don't worry about that as much as I would have back when those scandals were coming out.
Elijah, I think basically the overarching thing is that this all was happening before. People were gambling on sports before. Players were getting paid before. Now it is legal and now it is regulated. So they're able to make it a lot safer, right? We don't want anybody getting involved with the mob because that is just not good.
No.
just not good whatsoever. But yeah, so it all was happening before and now it's just legal and they're able to have some sort of governing body, over it and making sure that everybody is, hopefully following those rules. But I do need to get to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com because Phil from Kentucky texted us in and said, too bad UK fans suck. Just ask any Broadway musicians. I can say that because I root for UK as well, Phil from Kentucky. Don't get me wrong, Phil. I've been one of those UK fans who suck just screaming, go Big Blue. But all fans suck because we just love our team so much. But Elijah,
college sports
we've talked a lot about we've talked about a lot of college basketball. We suck because we're fans sometimes and get so into it. But this technically is our last episode of Courtside with Campbell and Knezovic. But we've had so much fun and we love other sports too that you're going to see our other fandoms because we'll be continuing the show, same time slot every Saturday from 9 to 11 Central Time. And just changing the name to Campbell and Knezovic, where we're going to be talking everything under the sun sports.
Yeah, we got the Predators playoff push. They have a big game today against the Panthers and then another big game tomorrow in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. They're having a fantastic season, an exciting season with some players that are doing some fantastic things like breaking franchise records. The Titans offseason's getting a little juicier. We're getting closer to the NFL draft. The NBA, the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that has garnered a ton of attention around these parts. They're going to start the playoffs too. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. There's so much more to get into, and you can hear it all with us. We're not going away. The Courtside's getting dropped. Rest in peace, the college basketball season. But you're going to have Campbell and Knezovic every Saturday on these airwaves from 9 to 11. We ain't going anywhere. To quote Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street, we're not bleeping leaving. We're going to be back every Saturday, 9 to 11. And before we got here, too, I did look it up. Yes, Bruce Pearl was a student manager on that 1978-79 Boston College team that definitely got busted working with Henry Hill to point shave games. So he has his shady history definitely goes back really, really deep. But as we just said, every Saturday, 9 to 11, we're not going anywhere, friends. We're not going anywhere. The college basketball season's over. But you're still going to get us. You're stuck with us for 2 hours every Saturday morning. But we can finally put a bow on the college basketball season. Thank you guys for listening. For those who listened for the college hoops, thank you for listening all season long from October to the final buzzer of the national championship game. We can't wait to get the podcast and the show again started for college basketball purposes back in October. Been an amazing season. Thank you for joining along with us for our first college basketball season doing this, and hope to have you every Saturday from 9 to 11 with Campbell and Knezovic right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.